Hello friends, satellite has become the talk of the town discussion. Everywhere everybody is talking about satellite and you can see multiple headlines are being written every day. Now today there is one more headline which is 18th of March 2020. Today is 18th of March. So this headline came. This is Times of India Business Desk, which talks about Elon Musk Starlink may offer 80 to 90 times more capacity than its rival. Now, I have no doubt it's definitely going to offer more capacity than its rival because the number of satellites are huge compared to their rivals. They have a huge number of satellites compared to the rivals. But when I saw this headline, there is one thought which came to my mind, which actually I was not investigating earlier. And I found this thought pretty interesting and I would like to share with you because this is going to be extremely crucial. Same service, same rules. Satellite services were threat to the terrestrial communication. All the narratives that you have heard in past, right? And there have been a lot of claims and counterclaims that no, satellite is not going to be a threat to the mobile services or the terrestrial mobile broadband services, which are mainly fixed WA, fixed wireless access devices or fixed line optical fiber based connections, etc. There will be no. Why? Because tariff is considered to be an important benchmark or a comparison metric to say that you can't even position those satellite services at a price point which can compete with the fixed line offering. Now, this is the direction in which I was also going, but I thought of investigating this from a different direction altogether. So in this video, friends, I am going to give you a completely different way of looking at the whole thing, which is capacity. Because this capacity thing just came into my mind and started investigating this. And I will tell you that how many subscribers, simultaneous subscribers that we can serve in India based on a certain throughput, which Starlink provider will commit to the Indian users. For example, whenever you are selling broadband connection, you commit certain throughput or bandwidth, which is 100 Mbps download. I'm not even talking about upload, right? 100 Mbps download. Let's assume that that is the commitment that Starlink gives. Now with 100 Mbps sure download speed, how many users that India can support simultaneously? That is the calculation that I am going to do right in front of you. And you will find it so interesting that it is going to blow your mind. So just be with me and you will find this video very, very interesting, right? Now, before we get to this analysis, I will like to point to one important report because that report will become a reference because that gives us a overview of Starlink customers worldwide, right? So there are two data points which we are going to start with. One is Starlink customers worldwide and how many satellites they have worldwide. That is very important. Then we are going to talk about Reliance Jio and OneWeb, if at all it is necessary. I don't think it will be necessary because Starlink is going to give you the overall picture that how constrained we are from a satellite point of view to provide connectivity, and therefore satellite can't even compete with the terrestrial broadband connection because it doesn't really have the capacity, right? So let's look at this. So first thing first. So I was doing some internet research. I saw this guy who started complaining, and the article was written on 27th July 2022 when the numbers of Starlink subscribers are pretty less in North America. And this article talks about that performance oversubscription, and then it talks about a huge problem of capacity in North America. And you can read through this article and you will find similar such articles, and it gives a very deep detailed insight as to what is going on. And there are many comments here, right? I have not read this thing because I'm not interested in going and spending time here because there will be different issues that we are going to deal with in India. So let's do one more thing. Let's go to the report and let's look at that. Definitely, this was in 2022. Now, if you look at North America, because that was the North American customer complaining. So at that time, in September 2023, number of subscriber North America had was 1.2 million, which has risen to 2.396 million, right? Which is September 2024. Okay, now just note this number 2.39 million. And another number that we should be keeping tab on is the number of satellites, right, which Starlink has. So let me just show you which table. Yeah, So this is the number of satellites in orbit, around 6,400 satellites, and they are planning to launch many more satellites. So this is another data point which you should be focusing on, which is very, very important. And you can see that how number of satellites are so less compared to the other. For example, if you see the SES Intelsat, this is a 127 satellites, and that OneWave is just 648 satellites. They're nowhere close to what Starlink is. Now let's get to the next stage of this analysis. For that, what I have done is I have created some few slides. And you will find this analysis, by the way, very interesting. And it's not going to be very complicated. Any layman who has got some idea will be able to understand. So what did I do? I did some internet research. And I figured out that how many satellites that India can simultaneously have. How many satellites can look over India? Because Starlink has around 6,400 satellites, right? And it is spread all over the globe. I made a very simple comparison, right? I said that, look, India can have, how many satellites India can have? India probably can have, I'll show you, 40 satellites. Let's assume that India can have 40 satellites. You can make that number of satellites to 50 also. But I'm going with 40 because that is a guess that I made based on the area of India compared to the world, because the satellites that have been launched is not specific for India. So at a time, 40 satellites can be seen from India. Means in 40 satellites, 40 to 50, you can make it 50, you can make it 60, depending upon what you feel. But I'm just assuming that 40 satellites will be serving India simultaneously at any point of time. As the satellites keep moving around the globe, other satellite is going to take over. So assume that 40 satellites, right, is going to serve India out of those 6,000 plus 6,400 plus satellites, and which is a very, very important number to look at, because that is going to be crucial. If you make it 50, it is going to increase. If you make it 60, the capacity is going to increase. But let's assume start with 40. Another important thing that we have to take into consideration is what is going to be the bandwidth for downlink. And for that, friends, you should look at this document. This is a very important document which gives us country, satellite operator, deployment bands, satellite plans, and the next phase of satellite plans and life. It's an old document, so I'm assuming that the KU and KA band, Starlink has around 6,400 satellites, and the next generation satellites are going to be in a different frequency band. So if you look at this, the uplink and the downlink, forget about the feeder link, it's not important. The user link, the uplink and the downlink. What is uplink? Uplink means the ground terminal talking to the satellite, which is this frequency. Earth to space, Earth to space. And space to Earth is the downlink, which is this. Now this is 2 gigahertz and this is 500 megahertz. Just note down. I am assuming that when we start the service, it will be 2 gigahertz of bandwidth, which will be downlink, and 500 megahertz of bandwidth, which is uplink. So this is the point which I was trying to say. 40 satellites overhead at any given point of time made an assumption. It can change. It can become 50, 60, but as it increases, the calculations are going to change. These satellites are very, very fast moving. And another important concept that you need to keep in mind, that whenever you're talking about this 2 gigahertz of downlink and 500 megahertz of uplink, these are going to be broken up in spatial dimension. If you recall, I spoke about a concept called beam splitting. So if there were no beam splitting, then you have just 2 gigahertz of bandwidth. But if there are beam splitting, then what you can do, you can create 48 spot beams. I'm just assuming 48 spot beams because what will happen is this 2 gigahertz of spectrum is going to be repeated in a footprint of satellite. Let's say satellite has got a footprint like this. I'm going to show you, I'll draw and show you. Let's say this is a footprint. Oh my God, let me just show you. This is the footprint of the satellite. Let's assume that. Within this footprint, what will happen is, I'll just draw another shape and show it to you. So let me just go and take another shape. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to show that, look, this is another footprint. And I'm going to fill it up here using shape fill. Let's say I'll do a color here. So like that, if I copy here, so 48 such beams, spot beams, are going to be visible from the satellite, because you are breaking the 2 gigahertz of bandwidth into such spot beams, 48 numbers, which is almost similar to what you do in case of beam splitting for 5G FWA Same concept here, because these are high frequency and you can do 48 spot beams like that. So you are able to increase the overall capacity of 2 gigahertz, multiple times depending on how many spot beams you have from the satellite. So these spot beams are doing what? They are coming from the sky, and like so many spot beams, right? The same satellite will have multiple such spot beams in the same frequency of 2 gigahertz. Do you understand now what I'm talking about? Now let's go to the next slide. So here we are saying that now, making that assumption, that calculation of 48 spot beams and 2 gigahertz, we can calculate that the total capacity of 2 gigahertz per satellite will be 20 Gbps of total, bandwidth, right? Total bandwidth means it is not total bandwidth. We have got 2 gigahertz of bandwidth, but capacity. So it is not properly worded here. Just forget that. The total capacity of 2 gigahertz with 48 spot beams are going to be 20 Gbps. Okay. Now let's say assume that we have got 100 Mbps per user. Okay. Now if you have got 100 Mbps per user, then you have got 2000 Mbps, because this is 20 GB divided by 100. It's going to be how many users? So if you divide this 100 Mbps, this is going to become 200 users. Right? Simple calculation. 200 users, 2000 divided by 100, 2 zeros cancel, and we have got 200 users. Now, how many satellites we have? We have got 40 satellites. So you just multiply 200 by 40 means 8,000 concurrent users, right? Simple calculation. Anybody can do it. Any class 10 student can do this kind of calculation. Now, let's go to the next part of the assumption. Now, it is not possible that all the users are going to be simultaneously active at one single time. Right? It is called a concentration factor, which is used for any kind of switching design. So you use a peak capacity assumption for 20 users, or 20 for if you have 100 users, assume that 20 users are going to be simultaneously active. For that, the network has to be designed for like that, which means that 80 users are going to be not using the network, which can be a fair assumption, and depending upon what kind of usages that you see, you can change this number from 20 to 30 or 40 depending upon. It is not possible, it is improbable that all the users are going to be simultaneously active. That is why you have to divide this 8,000 by 0.2 and you get 40,000 concurrent users. Means 40,000 users which will be able to use the Starlink capacity, which is we are talking about, with big, the Starlink is going to change the whole thing, whole world is going to change. We will have internet and 100 Mbps. I'm not even talking about upload, which is still going to be very, very small. Upload speeds are going to be, minuscule. It not be more than 10 Mbps. Mind you, you are going to have a very, very bad, because in uplink spot beams are not possible. Only in downlink spot beams are possible, right? So you can't get that multiplying factor in uplink. Here you see how many users you are able to support. Only 40,000 users. Now, if you change the number of satellites and increase the number of satellites to double, this is going to become how many? 80,000 users. 80,000 users. So now you understand that how difficult, to deploy broadband connection using satellite. And that is why satellite spectrum is not auctioned. People don't understand this. Why satellite spectrum is not auctioned? Because if you have a 2 gigahertz of spectrum, and you break this spectrum into multiple chunks of, let's say, 500 megahertz each to 2 operators, this number is going to become how much? This number is going to drop significantly, because for 100 Mbps you cannot support with just 500 megahertz of spectrum. You need the full 2 gigahertz of spectrum to support 100 Mbps. That is why satellite spectrum is not auctioned. That's why satellite spectrum is always shared. Because you cannot support so many users. You need the full bandwidth in order to support the so many users. Imagine that, how many subscribers we have of fixed line and optical fiber, 36 million, and it's growing. And you have just capability to do 40,000. It may be that I'm over exaggerating the calculations. Those calculations may be little fine-tuned here and there, etc. Okay, let's assume that this number goes to maybe 5 times. Okay, I give it to you. This number, if you multiply it by 5, what will happen? This will be 200K. That's all. 200K. You understand what I'm talking about? So satellite really doesn't have the capacity. Now, if Starlink is going to be constrained as far as their capacity is concerned, imagine what is going to happen to OneWeb and SES, which Reliance is trying to do. So all this discussion is actually in the air. People are talking in the air because they are not doing, because I did not take much time to do this calculation. Maybe I am a little off. Maybe my calculations are not accurate. This is just a ballpark calculation, okay? Maybe you can say that no, your calculation, you may take it 0.1 because people will not be using a satellite. Maybe 0.1, okay. You take 0.1, whatever you want to take. You take that number. It is not going to significantly change the. So if you take 0.1, what will happen? You just see the calculation. It will become 80. That's all. You don't have to divide by 2. Right? That's all is going to happen. So friends, that's all in this video. I just wanted to throw some idea before you because this kind of discussion nobody does. And this is the most important thing to do. How many satellites are going to be looking over India simultaneously? How many users will we be able to support given that per satellite what will be the capacity? And then what will be the concentration factor, 20%, 10%, 40%, what you are going to make. So that will give you how many subscribers you will be able to support simultaneously, and that's why the satellite services never scale. So let's say that 6,000 satellite becomes 12,000. Yeah, it can become 12,000, but imagine the kind of investment that is required. That is why you can't afford. You can't afford to give satellite services at $10 per subscriber. No, it is not possible because you have to pull down those satellites after every 5 years because satellite will have certain fuel which are required to do some fine tuning of the orbit, and this fuel is going to exhaust and you have to pull down the satellite, which otherwise you will fall in somebody's head, right? So anyway, friends, I'm going to stop here. I probably think that you understand what I'm talking about. It's so difficult, right? So when people get carried away, these things happen. The reality is completely different, friends. Okay? So let's talk about reality, and then we will understand that satellite is not a replacement for fixed service broadband. Whatever the mobile operators were, all the, like a fear, the narrative of fear that the mobile operators were spreading around, saying that satellite is going to spoil their, sleep or, their happiness, is not going to happen. It has never happened anywhere else in the world because it doesn't have the capacity to serve so many customers. Thank you, friends, for your time. I'll come back with a new video next time on a new topic. Thanks for watching.